Thanks for taking the time to download the Inside the Jungle podcast. To send along your feedback about this show, send your emails to insidethejungle@spnt.tv.
Hey, what's happening, Bengals fans? This week on Inside the Jungle, we'll take a look at the secondaries to begin our series on the position groups and give them some letter grades. We'll also take a look at the Pro Bowl. Believe it or not, there are two new Bengals heading to the big game. We'll also take your calls and some other breaking news surrounding the Bengals. We'll all cover it here tonight on the Wednesday Night Roundtable on CCJungle.com.
This is the Wednesday Night Roundtable with Nick Superling, Mickey Menzer, Anthony Cosenza, and Scott Bantel.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. This is the Wednesday Night Roundtable, part of the Inside the Jungle podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nick Superling. The fearsome foursome are back yet again to talk all things Bengals for the next hour. And we hopefully will be hearing from you as well. If you want to get in touch, 404-946-3397 is the number to call, or you can Skype us as well on Inside the Jungle. Let's welcome in the man basking in all his scarlet and gray glory, the one and only Mickey Menzer. Congratulations to your Buckeyes, man.
Thanks, man. I mean, who would have thought, after the Virginia Tech game, that they would have turned into that team? But I don't think anyone has a doubt that they earned it, deserved it, whatever. That was pretty impressive.
I'm a little disappointed. We spent about way too much. We spent about 1 minute more than we needed to on Cardale Jones last week, especially the next day when he decided to stay. But I guess that's a debate we can put off for yet another year. But again, congratulations. We missed you last week. Did you have fun down in Florida?
I did, man. It stunk not being able to go to that game with AC and Cody, but I got to meet an astronaut. I got to take the kids to the Space Center. It was unbelievable.
Very cool. Well, we're glad you're back, and I'm glad you had a chance to get down there because that is some pretty awesome stuff. I'm a fan as well and would love to eventually make it down there. But glad you're back. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts this week on the program. Let's welcome in AC, who spent the weekend at the NFLPA Bowl. How was it, AC?
It was awesome. Unfortunately, I think I mentioned this last week. I didn't get to go with Mickey to the game. It's kind of funny. We set this whole thing up. I didn't go to the game with him last year. He doesn't get to go this year, but it was a good time. They took great care of us and made sure we had some great interviews. Cody and I got to speak probably with about 4 to 6 players throughout the week, and then we also spoke to DeMaurice Smith, the NFLPA Executive Director. That interview will probably be going up on the site tomorrow. And then Cody got to speak after Thursday's practice with Eric Winston, which was kind of cool. So a couple of nice interviews there, and those will be up on the site. But great time. Good to see you guys. Mickey, I don't blame you for missing that. I too, am a little bit interested in space, the solar system, that sort of thing. So I bet that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the NFLPA Bowl, though it's not as hyped as the Senior Bowl going on right now this week down in Mobile, it's still a pretty good bowl and a good showcase of college talent. And you got to see it firsthand, and that's pretty cool. Pretty excited about that. Let's welcome in Mr. Scott Bantel. Beam me up, Scotty. How you doing, Scott?
Good, Nick. I did not, unfortunately, I did not get to meet any astronauts. I did not get to go to any college bowls, but I did paint an antique dresser this weekend, so I think I got that one-upping the guys.
You win, man. What can I say?
Yep.
Well, I'm glad you're back this week to talk more about the Bengals. There's been, believe it or not, it is the off season, but you would have no idea considering all the news and all the stuff coming out around this team. We'll get to that in a minute, but before we do that, I want to take just a quick moment. While you're listening to this show, the podcast awards have kicked off. They started on Monday. We need your nomination. So while you're listening to us right now, hit the pause button. Just go ahead and hit the pause button and log on to podcastawards.com. And then nominate Inside the Jungle for the Podcast Awards in the sports category. We've been a finalist the past 3 years. We're hoping again to make it a 4th. Again, that web address, podcastawards.com, the show name Inside the Jungle, and the podcast URL is spnt.tv/Inside the Jungle. All right, now that we've taken care of that, let's talk about some news, and believe this is just breaking. This just came down the pipe from, I saw this from Josh Kirkendall on CincyJungle.com. That's also from Paul Dehner and Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com. They've been speaking with Marvin Lewis down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and it sounds like there's going to be changes to the status quo. Now, from whatever you can make from that whatever you want, it sounds like, and this is what Paul Dehner and Jeff Hobson have hinted at, that the Bengals are going to be active, very active in free agency this year. And I know that for you, Anthony, just kind of tickles your fancy, and I know you're pretty stoked about that. But at the same time, cautious optimism when you hear comments like this?
Absolutely. I'll believe it when I see it. They have been splashy over the past few years. Unfortunately, some of the big outside free agent deals that they had kind of blew up in their face, and that's why they've shied away from it, I think, in recent years. And since they've drafted pretty well, I think they've said, hey, let's make that our bread and butter, stay away from some of these outside guys. But if this is the case, and I hope it is, because this team is talented, but it needs some other talented pieces that you can't fill totally in the draft, and you do need some veteran guys that can provide a spark at certain positions, and I hope it's the case. I think it's a couple years too late for them to be diving in here, because we've talked about that window of theirs that this team might be experiencing, but I think they saw some weaknesses in the pass rush and some misses that they did have in the draft that they kind of counted on, and they didn't really pan out. So I would bet that probably defensive end or linebacker are probably going to be sought after by this team, and rightfully so. I think they just need to get younger and more athletic at a number of positions, and defensive line is one of them. You know, they've got some older guys there, and hopefully that's where they're looking. But again, I'll believe it when I see it.
So the Bengals might, that's the keyword might, Mickey, be active in free agency this offseason. And they do have some holes that they need to fill in the defensive line. But do you take that as maybe they're not seeing the depth of D-line that they were hoping in this college class coming out? Or is this the fact that, look, we haven't spent any money the last 4 years. We've been doing it this way. Yes, we've gotten to this point, but we need to do something different. We need to make changes for the sake of making changes to maybe see if that's going to get them over the hump. How do you take these comments, and what's your response?
Well, I think I'll start with I think we all could agree that the Bengals have done pretty good in the draft, but they haven't gotten a ton of production out of their top picks lately. We could argue why we think that is. I personally think it's because we're too loyal to the veterans, but you know, they want to take that next step, and they understand there's a window for this team also. And so I think, you know, with them hinting to that, it doesn't really make sense why they would show their hand, but it may increase, you know, fan interaction. It may increase, you know, people getting behind this team. But the only thing that worries me is that, you know, free agency, it's a tough game, and if you miss, it hurts a lot. So I fully expect the Bengals to make some moves this season. They have been quiet the last couple of seasons. There are some positions, you know, look at linebacker and the depth or lack of at linebacker. They need to make some things happen, and I think they will. I think that's probably the right move at this point to take the next step.
They've got well over $30 million in cap space, Scott. They've still got to make a move and sign AJ Green to a long-term deal, and we've talked about it ad nauseum on the show, especially last offseason when they weren't making moves, and now here we are on the brink of free agency kicking off here for 2015. The Bengals are going to do something different. Now, you've been a long-time Bengals fan. Is this more of a "I'll believe it when I see it" kind of comment from Marvin Lewis, or are you thinking this is going to actually happen?
I'm going to believe it when I see it. You know, I'm a little bit different than I think a lot of people in that I actually like the Bengals' approach to free agency. I would like to see them sign, you know, maybe go after a few more top people than they have in the past. You know, but I kind of like their cautious approach. I don't like the big spending. I think it's been proven year in, year out that the big spenders in free agency, generally speaking, do not do well. The teams that do well are the teams that draft well, and the Bengals have done a good job of that. But I think there are some places where, you know, when you've got a team that's close like the Bengals, where they can fill some immediate needs and make some big impacts, you know, with one or two guys. I think if you look across this roster, there's not a lot of positions where you can say they can improve that in free agency, but there is one or two. And I think it would behoove them to address those one or two spots and to do so with a proven veteran, maybe on the line, maybe at the linebacker position.
Well, we'll see. It will remain to be seen whether or not the Bengals actually spend the money that they have banked in their salary cap. For whatever reason, they have chosen not to spend it. And Anthony, you know this as well, and the Bengals have shown this in recent history, not just with outside free agents, but their own free agents as well. When they sign these big contracts, typically things don't go well the next year. We saw it with Geno Atkins getting injured. We saw it with this year with Vontaze Burfict getting hurt. I mean, they don't have the best history of signing these guys to big money deals.
Yeah, they've been a little snake bitten, to the points of Scott and Mickey and a topic we talked about a couple of weeks ago. You can't run your franchise in fear, and you can't be afraid. I guess it's kind of a dating terminology, but you can't be afraid to put yourself out there. And if you've been burned once or twice or even a number of times, you can't crawl back in a shell. And yes, some of these things have been working out. Obviously, they're averaging about 10 wins per season over the past 4, and that's great. But it's not enough, and they can't be so cautious that they're really worried about their cap position that they don't make moves. And you've seen some of these teams that, I mean, look at the two that are in the Super Bowl. I mean, the Patriots found a way to still sign Darrelle Revis, and he's helped them a lot this year. The Seahawks have done a number of moves on their defensive line, and they've done big moves over the past couple of years. They got burned on the Percy Harvin trade, but they still put themselves out there and signed big-name guys. You have to, if you want a championship, you have to be able to do that. If you want to make the draft your main focus, great. Continue to do that because they've done pretty well, I think, for the most part over the past few years. But you have to supplement the draft with quality free agents, and even if that means taking certain chances. So I'd like to see him do it. I don't know exactly what quote-unquote big changes are according to the Bengals in this approach. Who knows what that means? But, they need some upgrades, and I think this year you kind of saw that, especially when guys got injured.
Well, we'll see what happens. Again, I'm going to take the approach of I'll believe it when I see it because the last 4 years they have not spent the money in free agency. I'm not saying that they haven't gone out and signed guys because they have, but we're talking about the prized free agents out there that everybody thinks could have definitely helped this team, but for whatever reason they have stayed away from spending big money in free agency. We'll see what happens. We have a long ways to go this offseason, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more and more as the weeks go here in 2015. Well, I want to talk about, believe it or not, the Pro Bowl. And since we last spoke, everybody, the Bengals added 2 more Pro Bowlers this year. Geno Atkins made the Pro Bowl, and Andy Dalton made the Pro Bowl, I think, as like the 13th alternate. I'm kidding. There's been a lot of people talking and a lot of debate of whether or not Dalton's the guy moving forward. And as part of the conversation Marvin Lewis had down in Mobile with Paul Nader and Jeff Hobson, he added this quote, Mickey, "We don't have time to waste with another quarterback." And he also thinks that the reason why they've been so consistent and so good is that they have not had a controversy at the quarterback position. So when you hear those comments from Marvin Lewis, what's your take?
I agree.
I had a feeling.
They have a quarterback that's taken them to the playoffs every year he's been in the league. I mean, we've talked about this just a ton, but I don't think you're going to improve on Dalton this year, maybe in the next couple seasons. I mean, who really is there that you're going to improve? So you have to build a team around what the guy can do. And I wrote an article about it. I don't remember if we talked about it on here, about he is what he is. And the people get so angry with him, and they compare him like, well, Peyton Manning elevates his team, or Tom Brady. He's not those guys. Like, Dalton's a fairly consistent passer. Gets his completion percentage is high. He'll make a couple mistakes in a game. He's not going to put the team on his back and lead them, but he can be the guy that gets it done if he has a good run game, if the defense is doing their job. So, I mean, this goes back to our first point. If the Bengals build a team up around what they have right now, what they have signed, Dalton's not the most terrible quarterback in the game. He's not the best. He is what he is. And I think the difference between people like, maybe even Scott and myself versus, some of the people that we read their articles is we understand what he is. And I don't look at him through Peyton Manning goggles or Tom Brady goggles. I look at him through Andy Dalton goggles, and I don't expect him to, be a gunslinger throwing the ball, hitting every open read. He's not that great at checkdowns. If his first read's open, he'll probably complete the pass. If you build the team around that, you can be successful. I think the Bengals could have made a run this year had they had a few more pieces in line, and it could have been because of injury, or maybe it's what we'll add in free agency. I don't know. I agree with what Marvin has said. You know what you have at that position, so make the other pieces a little bit better.
He's really only had 3 quarterbacks in his tenure here in Cincinnati, Scott. You look at Kitna, Palmer, and Dalton. Yeah, you sprinkle in. I think there was some a year when Palmer most of the season. So Fitzpatrick was your starter quarterback, but we all knew Palmer was the guy. You can't argue that he hasn't had problems at that position in his tenure. Now down the stretch this year and in the postseason again against Indy, let's face it, they didn't lose because of Andy Dalton. They lost because they had nobody to help him on offense. And when the teams, that they're going up against know that his best threat is to turn around and hand the ball off to Jeremy Hill, that's going to be awfully tough to win. So it's not all on him.
Yeah, and I think, Mickey and I are I think, in agreement on this when it comes to Dalton is, I know what Dalton is and I know what Dalton is not. And I think that's important for people to start realizing is that, yes, he's got a big contract, but he's not Peyton Manning. He's not Tom Brady. He's not a guy that's going to carry the team. And I hear people talk about, well, if you need to bring a team in around him to make him better, then he's not your guy. I said that's completely false. There's 8 quarterbacks in this league that are that guy. There's 24 other teams that have to try to find a decent quarterback and build around that quarterback. That's the way you can either win with a great quarterback or a decent quarterback with a great team around him. The Bengals are in the latter category. And, like you said, this year the playoff loss wasn't on Dalton. And I know he played bad the last couple years in the playoffs, but again, we can't pinpoint that on Dalton. We've talked about it before that the defense gave up 180 rushing yards. I don't care who your quarterback is. It can be Peyton Manning. If your defense is giving up 180 rushing yards, you're not going to win. So yes, Dalton needs to take the blame for his part of those losses, but he's not the only one to blame for these losses. He's good enough to win with, but Mickey's right. They've got to build a team around him. He's got to have a run game. He's got to have a good defense, and he's got to have some weapons. And, probably a little bit better coaching as well.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the debate about whether or not Dalton's the guy moving forward because I think we know the answer that the Bengals they've made it clear that Dalton is their guy and they want him to be the quarterback moving forward. And that's not what I'm here to debate. I guess the reason I wanted to bring up the whole Dalton thing is the fact that he was added to the Pro Bowl when he didn't have that great of a year. I mean, he had 19 touchdowns and 17 interceptions, AC. And let's also talk about the fact that Geno Atkins makes the Pro Bowl when he didn't have exactly his best year either. Is that where we're at these days with the Pro Bowl, that nobody wants to go, and so you're talking about guys that are way down on the pecking order just to fill out these Pro Bowl rosters?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on what the other two guys said, but we'll leave the Dalton debate behind a little bit there, not take up the whole show with that. The ironic thing I found about Dalton making the Pro Bowl this year was the fact that he should have been, at least in consideration statistically, for a Pro Bowl last year. He broke franchise records. He basically had, touchdown-wise, about half the production this year. His yards were down. Yeah, his completion percentage was up, and he was missing weapons this year, sure, but he just he was not asked to do as much this year in terms of big plays and throwing the ball as much, but he also didn't play as well either, I thought. So I found that pretty ironic. And the same thing with Geno Atkins. You could tell he wasn't the same guy. I don't know if he's going to be the same guy next year. I hope so. I think every Bengal fan hopes so. But I kind of find it ironic that these two guys had very down years. It wasn't like they were snubs and were brought down on the list, and then it was like, okay, good, this is deserved. That wasn't the feeling at all for these two guys. And yes, I think that is where an indictment of the Pro Bowl and where it's at. Guys don't necessarily want to go. Maybe they want to spend as much time with their families or their significant other or whatever in the off season once it hits. And Arizona's a nice place. It's warm, especially even this time of year. But I think also the added incentive of taking a trip to Hawaii and really kind of having a big party type of atmosphere, along with playing football, having a party with football in Hawaii, kind of was appealing to a lot of players. And the fact that it's bouncing around, it's not in as a desirable of location as it's traditionally been. I think that's kind of a deterrent. And guys, even if they're slightly nicked up or they got something going on, they just kind of said, hey, thanks, but no thanks. So I think I read somewhere that Dalton was the 7th alternate or something for a quarterback. And, it is what it is. That's about probably where he ranks if you want to rank him quarterback-wise. I just found it ironic that he had a much lower year statistically this year and makes the Pro Bowl as opposed to a year like last year when he was breaking franchise records.
It's an interesting debate when you look at that a lot of these guys that are getting these Pro Bowl nods who I don't want to say they're not deserving, but I think that some of these guys, and I'm wondering too, Mickey, if Andy Dalton has some kind of clause in his contract that gives him a bonus if he makes a Pro Bowl. A lot of guys have those Pro Bowl clauses in their contracts, and so. And you couple in the fact that the game is pretty much unwatchable as it is. Are you going to watch, Mickey?
No, and I'm sure he has some bonus clause in there for the Pro Bowl, and I think they get a check from the NFL for that. But
you get a check too if you win. It's like $58,000 if you win, and $27,000 if you lose.
Right. So the Pro Bowl is a joke. I'm sure Ray Lewis still gets votes. It's a popularity contest. It's stupid. It's dumb, and I don't put any stock into it. I'm glad there's more Bengals there, but I really don't care about the Pro Bowl whatsoever.
Well done. Ray Lewis probably got a couple write-in votes. That's fantastic. What about you, Scott? Are you going to watch the Pro Bowl now that there's 2 more Bengals added to the roster?
No, but if I am home, I'll flip it on as background noise and take a look every now and again. But now with Dalton in, I got to watch just to see if he can, stick it to all the people giving him crap, or if he just plays right into it and sucks like they think he will. So maybe Dalton brings some added eyeballs to the screen.
Didn't he play well the last time he was out there? Didn't he win like the Pro Bowl MVP or something like that, or he had a really good game or something? AC?
I think you're right.
Yeah, I think he did because he had a ton of great wide receiver. I think he threw a couple of touchdowns to Brandon Marshall, if I remember correctly. But I don't know if you were asking me or not, Nick. But I probably will watch a little bit of the Pro Bowl. We're talking now 3 Bengals players are in it. And it's one of the last chances to watch football, regardless of what you make of that game and the seriousness of the players, the stock that the players put into that game. I'll probably watch it a little bit, check it out, and see how those Bengals players do. And it is one of the last points of the football calendar until the new football year kicks off. So I'll pay a little more attention to it this year than I probably have the last couple.
You're shortchanging the Bengals. They have 4 players.
Oh, 4. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what time the game is. I probably won't watch it. I don't know if I've ever watched a Pro Bowl, to be honest. I have no interest. I think that when I have tuned in years past and I look and I watch the ball snapped and I see the defensive line and the offensive line stand up and kind of like high five one another, just there's no sacks. It's not even a game. It's it's 7-on-7 with 11 people on the field. You know, it's not to me not all that exciting. Maybe I'm wrong. Love to hear your thoughts, the Bengals fans. Let me know if you will watch the Pro Bowl this weekend. Email me insidethejungle@spnt.tv. So congratulations to our newest Pro Bowlers again, Andy Dalton and Geno Atkins, for making it again here this season. All right, let's start off our position group series. And I wanted to pick the secondary for a couple reasons. One, because our resident cornerback here on the program, Mickey Mentzer, is back with us this week. But two, the news this week that Vance Joseph, who's the corners coach for the Cincinnati Bengals, was rumored to be one of the defensive coordinator candidates out in Denver under Gary Kubiak, who he also coached for down in Houston. And there's been some grumblings on the social media about how unfair Mike Brown has treated Vance Joseph. But I guess the rules are that if you are under contract with the team and you're not getting a head coaching position, that the teams, I think, and if I'm wrong, guys, feel free to correct me, can block a candidate from interviewing with another club for their coaching hire. So Mike Brown ultimately decided to deny Vance Joseph a chance to go be a defensive coordinator in Denver. So Mickey, I want to get your thoughts on that before we get into the breaking down how he did this year with cornerbacks. What's your take?
A couple things. One, I think it's important for the Bengals to keep a coaching staff. From one season to the next, they've lost coordinators both last year, and that continuity is what is really going to help this team grow. The other thing I want to mention is, everyone assumes that Vance Joseph was blocked, and they're up in arms that Mike Brown would be that selfish and do that. But no one really knows what happened. Mike Brown, the only thing that came out was that he wanted to meet with them before he made a decision, and then Mike Brown became the bad guy. Like you said, Joseph worked for Kubiak in the past. He may have said, "I don't want to work for that guy again." But it could be that it's very likely that it could be a situation where Joseph didn't want the position, didn't want to burn a bridge, so it's on Mike Brown. What does he care? This is definitely supported by Josh Kirkendall. We talked about it earlier today, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, why would Joseph come out and turn it down when that could show bad on him? Where Mike Brown could take the heat, and it just looks like he's blocked. He becomes the victim. But that's my thought on that. Either way, I'm fine with it. Those rules are there for a reason. I think it was the Denver Post, wrote some ridiculously stupid article about racism and all this dumb stuff, which is a joke. I mean, it's a joke that a credentialed member of the media would just be that freaking moronic. It's part of the game. It's happened in the past. If Mike Brown did block him, that's part of it. I think the Bengals are in a win-win situation no matter what, so I don't really care.
This isn't the first time that this has happened. In fact, Marvin talked about it today, that he was blocked when he was a coach with the Steelers from interviewing to be a coordinator with the Tampa Bay Bucks under Tony Dungy. So this isn't news. This happens every year. It just so happens that Vance Joseph was, I believe this was his first year here in Cincinnati as the secondary coach, and he had a chance to go back to Denver where he played and potentially be a defensive coordinator. So, you want to add to that, Mickey?
I do, and wasn't it also the thing where at one point Joseph was rumored to get an interview as possible head coach, which everyone knew that it was Kubiak's job to turn it down. So, I mean, that's a little bit insulting to be the Rooney Rule, right? Like, that's exactly what he wasn't going to jump from a code defensive back coordinator coach to a head coach job in Denver. So they threw his name out there to pass that Rooney Rule, which he could have been insulted by that. I mean, plus another point that Josh made. I mean, here's an organization that went to the Super Bowl and then made the playoffs again. Yeah, they lost, but that's pretty short leash there. Who knows Manning's deal? If he comes back, his time's short. I mean, they're on a win now or else. Who says they don't fire the coaching staff again next year? So I think a lot of signs point to maybe he didn't want the position. So I'm not in the camp that thinks that Mike Brown just blocked him.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. We have no idea what happened. But it's these kind of things do happen in the NFL. It's not the first time a coach has been blocked from interviewing with another team. He's under contract with the Bengals, and when you have, I know contracts don't really mean anything in the NFL these days, but he is under contract, AC, and he's here. He's staying.
Yeah, and Mickey took a part of my little segment there, and that's exactly what I was thinking. He goes in maybe thinking, hey, I have a shot at the head coach job, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, this is Kubiak's. Now we want to bring in for a lesser position, and he might have just kind of got turned off by that. The other side of the coin too is, he may, and I'm completely speculating here, but if you think of yourself as employed and you're possibly being recruited elsewhere for promotion, and your boss says, no way, I'm letting you go. Number one, because you're under contract, but number two, because you do a great job here and we want you here. That's something that he probably maybe valued in a conversation with Mike Brown if that came up. I mean, he could have been flattered that, hey, you guys want me here. Who knows if a pay raise is being involved? I don't know that, but that could be part of the deal. There's also a potential opportunity if certain coaches come or go. I mean, Paul Guenther kind of had mixed reviews this year. He's probably going to have another year next year, but if he doesn't, perform to his duties, who knows if Vance goes in that role, and who knows even still how long Marvin Lewis is going to be here as well. He's got 1 year left on his deal. He is getting up there in age a little bit, and there's some mixed reviews there too. And Vance Joseph could be a guy that they look at potentially as a head coach down the road if that opportunity presents itself. So there are positives for him staying in Cincinnati, and Mickey brought up the gentleman from the Denver Post that wrote an article today, and I found that to be a pretty ridiculous article that he put out there. I couldn't believe he wrote that. But I think a lot of people surrounding the Bengals are pretty excited that he's sticking around.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I think the way that the secondary played this year had a lot to do with him being the coach. So let's get into that. I picked the secondary because I felt that out of all the position groups outside of the specialists, they were probably the best, most consistent group this year, guys. Scott, if you had to give a letter grade to the secondary, corners and safeties, let's hear your letter grade and your thoughts on how the secondary performed in 2014.
I'd give them an A. Like you said, Nick, I thought they were the strength of the team all year long. I thought they were the most consistent aspect of this team all year long. And you take a look at some of the numbers. I mean, I was taking a look at that last night. I think they were top 5 or top 6 in yards per attempt, in interceptions, in touchdowns allowed, in QB passer rating, and completion percentage. And when you think about it, they did that with absolutely zero pass rush. I mean, you're talking about the worst pass rush in the NFL. These guys were covering for 5, 6, 7 seconds, and yet they still put up those numbers. So, I thought as a group they did well. I like the development I saw out of Dre Kirkpatrick. I think some of that was to do with Vance Joseph, and maybe some of the reason why, the Bengals wanted him to stick around. They may have, kind of told him there's bigger things for you here as well. So, I think the secondary did very well. I'd give him an A. I like I like what I saw out of George Iloka this year as well as he developed. So, I think they did great.
Outside of I was just trying to replay in my head some memories from 2014 of the secondary of plays where they just absolutely got burned and looked bad. One play seems to come to mind, and again, it didn't count because there was offensive pass interference called. But the only bad thing I remember was how bad George Iloka looked on that Hail Mary that Steve Smith caught and scored a touchdown on that they called OPI on. Other than that, and unless you guys have a better memory of mine, I don't recall them looking bad, Mickey. So your assessment on the corners, the safeties this year, and how good of a job Vance Joseph did as a coach of that group?
I wish I would have prepared a little more. I don't think they did bad, and I'll give them an A-. I think one thing that I really noticed that our safeties, our corners especially, did very well was tackle. It seemed like, especially against the Saints, we gave up a ton of completions, but never the first guy there made the tackle. So they were 3-yard completion, 4-yard completion, getting off the field on third down, and that was huge from a corner. That's huge. They do that. The other thing that I question about the group is, and we just talked about it. We talked about it last time I was on. The youth that we have on this roster hasn't gotten their shot. And when we saw Dre Kirkpatrick play, he got a little better. He's an outstanding special teams player. But I think it's time to pass that baton and get those guys on the field more. But yeah, I mean, I think Pac-Man Jones played well. I think our safeties are one of the strengths of the defense. I agree with Scott that we didn't have the best pass rush, and the corner still held up. You're never gonna cover a receiver all day in the NFL. It just no one's that good. Darrelle Revis is Richard Sherman. They're gonna get burnt if the quarterback has time. So I think that all in all, our corners did really good. I just really think that their tackling was something that I noticed more often than not was pretty solid.
Doc Ox in the chat room is saying the 94-yard pass against the Steelers was one of the worst plays by the secondary. Okay, fair point. That was pretty bad and significant at the time. AC, if you had to give a letter grade to the secondary and to Vance Joseph as a coach, and Mickey mentioned that he wants to see some more youth, which I think we will. Terrence Newman's probably not going to be back. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he is, with the way the team has run the last couple of years. And they've drafted well with the picks of Kirkpatrick and Denard the last couple of years. So your thoughts on the secondary as a group?
Well, first of all, yes, Vance Joseph is a big part of that, but let's also give a little, if you are big on the play of the secondary, let's also give a little credit to Mark Carrier, who helps out with the defensive back groups as well. He's kind of the co-coach there, I believe, with Vance Joseph. So give him a little pat on the back. I'm going to be a little harsher. I think I'm going to give him a B. Part of that ding does come from the lack of pressure up front. I think why this secondary has played so well in years past is because of the pass rush that's been generated up front, and they did pretty well for the most part, hanging with receivers for a while when there was no pass rush, and you got to give them some credit for that. I thought Leon Hall was a major liability throughout a good chunk of the year, unfortunately, and I really like Leon Hall, but he just didn't look the same, and he struggled keeping up with some of the faster guys, and it wasn't just the big play against the Steelers. I mean, there was numerous others. The two Indy games kind of come to mind. They played well, and really one of the bigger games they played extremely well was that Denver game, but they also struggled against Indianapolis. They struggled against New England. They struggled against I'm drawing a blank here, but they struggled against some of the better passing teams the Steelers. That was the other one. So I have a hard time giving him a solid grade. I think Reggie Nelson is a very good football player. I think George Aloka is going to continue to improve and be an even better football player. But I think this is one of those positions that needs an injection of youth and athleticism, like Mickey said. And the good news is, if we're talking about the diving into free agency or the draft or whatever, they've already stockpiled some young, good talent there, so they don't really need to invest heavily this year in that position. I think they're going to probably give Kirkpatrick and Denard a bigger role, hopefully, this next year, and hopefully that play even improves even off of the pretty solid performance this year. But I think what they have is a lot of savvy veterans, some good technicians, but they need some speed and athleticism and a guy who, when he does get an interception, he can take it to the house, and they need more athletes at this position. And I think they have that, especially in Kirkpatrick, but we'll have to kind of see how it goes on moving forward here. So I'd give them a B overall, I think.
When I when I think about the group as a whole, and I thought that they performed probably the best out of all the groups that the Bengals have positionally, I'll go B+. I thought they were solid in all areas, in the run game, in the pass game. There were, again, a couple times where they did get burnt and look bad, but I think every secondary could probably say that this year. They are getting older. Newman is up there in age. Hall is a very old, if you can consider the injuries he's had to endure, he's way up there in age. It's amazing to consider that he's even on the field. And you consider two Achilles tears. That's unreal. That speaks to Leon Hall's athleticism. That speaks to his pride and his heart as a football player. You got to give him credit for that. So I'll give him a B+ as a group. So Scott, if you had to pick an MVP of the secondary for the 2014, who would it be?
Ooh, boy, that's a tough one. Well, process of elimination. It's not Hall or Newman. It's not Taylor Mays. I would have to go with. I'd probably say Adam Jones. I think he had a solid year covering, but I think you also have to bring in the fact of what he brought to the team in the return game as well. I mean, he played a lot of snaps on defense, but he also contributed a bunch on special teams. So, I would say Jones.
How about you, Mickey? If you had to give an MVP for the secondary this year, who would it be?
If I had to do it for the secondary, I agree with Scott. If you tied into the kick returns to Jones, or if you tied in, the gunner ability of Kirkpatrick, but purely secondary, I think I gotta go Nelson. I think he was huge in stopping the run at times. I think he made big plays. He's a little bit of a threat. He's got a little bit of swagger. He'll hit anyone. So I'm going to say him.
That's a good pick. Nelson led the team in interceptions this year with 4. Believe it or not, Terrence Newman, AC, led the team in passes defensed with 14. So I know we give him a big knock, but he was a key player in that secondary as well. Adam Jones, 3 picks on the year, and George Iloka had 3 as well. So if you had to pick, we've got to vote for Nelson and we've got to vote for Adam Jones. Where are you going?
To the point about Newman, that's a great stat, and he did play pretty solid, especially because of his age, but I think he was thrown at a lot too. So I think that probably plays into that pass defense stat a little bit. Mickey stole my thunder a little bit. I'm gonna go Nelson as well. I think that's, for me, it's a shoe-in. He's physical. He causes turnovers. He brings leadership and an attitude to that defense. I would argue that, and Iloka is probably a close second for the secondary MVP for me. But I would argue that Iloka, Nelson, and Dunlap were the 3 best players on the defense this year. I thought all 3 of them played pretty solid throughout the entire year. And Reggie, now you talk about free agency and trades and all that stuff. That guy's been a great pickup for this team, not only from the initial trade, but the additional big contract they gave him after that. And I thought he's been a great player at a position that the Bengals have traditionally been relatively weak at for a while. So I would go Nelson.
I hate to sound like a broken record here, but I'm going to go Nelson as well. You factor in also, he was second on the team in tackles with 94, behind Vinny Ray. You add in the fact you had 4 picks, you had 12 passes defensed, you almost had 2 sacks this year. We saw him at times be a threat in the backfield, and I think you add in all those things. I know he doesn't have the appeal that Jones has with the special teams and the returns, but from a strictly tackling perspective, being in the box, in the running game, the guy made plays. So for me, I got to go Nelson as my MVP of the secondary. Love to hear your thoughts, though, Bengals fans. Inside the Jungle at spnt.tv is the email address. Let me know who you think is the secondary MVP for 2014, and we'll read those emails next week. Good stuff, guys. All right, shall we do some shout-outs before we get out of here?
Shout-out!
Let's start us off, Mr. Scotty B. Are you painting anything this weekend? No?
Well, yeah, I'm actually repainting the same said antique desk because it needs more than one coat. So my 4 hours on Saturday weren't enough. We're supposed to have decent weather here this weekend, so if you want to stop by and see me painting in the driveway, again, I will be out there doing it.
Awesome. We'll stay warm.
Yeah.
You got a shout out for
I'll
this
try.
week?
Yeah, I picked up a couple new followers this week. I'll give a shout out to. I picked up the Cincy Reds talk, which the Reds are right around the corner, so big Reds fan I am, so pumped about that. Also, a guy by the name of Cody Milne and Peter Ross Maclia.
Awesome. Good shout out. I'm glad you mentioned the Reds, too. I watched on MLB Network. They did a recap of the 1990 Nasty Boys last night. It was awesome to see. Brought back a lot of good memories from that year. I know Mickey was a big fan of that team, too.
Yep.
Shout-outs this week, Mickey Menser?
Yes, sir. Although I didn't make it, and I hope I'm not stealing AC's thunder. I'm going to shout out our girl, Jelaine Rogers from the NFLPA. At Jelaine is her Twitter handle. She hooked it up once again. Good event. Nice girl. I hope Anthony got to hang out a little bit with her. I hope it was a good time.
Good shout out, and thanks to her for giving us access for the second year in a row. Pretty cool stuff. AC's blushing over on the West Coast. AC, give me a shout out for this week.
I'm not blushing. I'm laughing. No, she did take great care of us. She, to her credit, she would grab some of these big name guys and hey, come over and talk to these guys, and just took great care of us. So yeah, that's a good one. I wasn't going to shout her out though, Mickey. So you aren't stealing thunder, but. Just a couple quick ones. Gentleman Bill Carroll, he runs a radio show as well. He's friends with Cody Toomey, and Cody told me he's on that show pretty frequently, and I picked him up as a recent follower. So that's one that comes to mind. I want to shout this guy out. He's, I believe, in the chat room, and I don't know if I've ever shouted him out, but Doc Ox. He's a very big supporter of the show and calls in, I think, particularly in the post-game show, but great guy and always has a great take. And then if we're going to do a sarcastic one, I got to go Mike Kliss, and that's the guy who wrote for the Denver Post, who wrote that pretty scathing article about the Bengals and their lack of letting Vance Joseph go. So if you have a chance, read that piece and give yourself a good laugh.
Good shout out, AC. I'm going to give a shout out this week to a listener who sent this email in. Starts off by saying, would you do me a favor and in one of the shows give a shout out to my son Lewis? He's a next generation Bengals fan since I bought him a Rudy Johnson shirt for his 5th birthday. He now wants a Vontaze Burfict shirt. Question for you: I'm hearing things are not good for Michael Johnson in Tampa Bay. If he hits the market again this offseason, do you think we should pick him up? And if he was re-signed, do you see the Bengals going for another defensive end in the draft? Thanks, Nick. Hooday. Mark in Surrey, England. Mark, thanks for the email. Appreciate it. And there's your shout out. Shout out to Lewis. Big fan of the Bengals over across the pond. Mick, I'll start with you. It doesn't sound like Michael Johnson is going to be around in Tampa much longer. He could either be traded or they might just outright cut him. So do you think he would be a good fit back here in Cincinnati?
I'd be shocked if they cut him already, but let's just play that game. Yes, if they cut him, absolutely sign him. He's a physical freak. You put him with the guys we have here, that's huge. All day, sign him back.
Scott, how about you? If they sign him back, do you still think they draft a defensive end in May?
I would. If I were them, I'd sign him. I think Robert Gather should be gone. I don't see what he provides the team. So yes, I'd sign Johnson, and if they still got a crack at what they think would be a good defensive end, develop him. Absolutely.
I saw a good post this week. I believe it was from Jason Markham about John Thornton, former Bengals, who's now an agent and worked on the negotiations between the Bengals and Michael Johnson a year ago, AC. And it sounds like they have regrets on all sides. The Bengals probably regret not making that deal happen, and it sounds like John Thornton, as his agent, regrets not making it happen for him in Cincinnati because of the fact that the Bengals didn't have a true right end. They've got 3 left ends and Robert Gathers. So yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Mickey and Scott that I would love to see him back, and I would love to see him signed. I'm thinking you're thinking along the same lines as well.
Yeah, he was just a good fit here, and he wasn't. He had the 1 year with the outstanding sack number. I think he had 11 and a half, but every other year was kind of meh in the sack category. But he played well against the run. He also batted a ton of balls down at the line because of his height and his wingspan. So I think what you saw this year, and both sides gambled. You know, Michael Johnson decided to chase the dollars and maybe go to a team that was a little questionable in terms of how they were going to be this year. And the Bengals said, you know what, we drafted Margus Hunt for a reason. He's going to be your replacement, and we're going to try and make that work. But it didn't. And what this defensive line thrives on is rotation. And Michael Johnson was a guy that was kind of a staple at that right end position, like you said. So if he were to become available, or even if he was available for a trade and a restructure of a contract, I would hope the Bengals spring at that because they know him. He'd play well here. I think he'd fit in and do some good things and bolster that pass rush. Even if they bring him in, though, I would like to see them get another pass rusher in the draft, preferably a linebacker, defensive end tweener, kind of a speed rush guy because they have these behemoth guys up front that can, you know, power their way into the backfield. But I think they need a quick lightning, kind of a finesse type of rusher, if you will, to get in there and add some speed to all of the size that's up front.
Yeah, good take. And thanks for the email, Mark. Appreciate it. If you want to get in touch, if you want to shout out here on the program, feel free to email me insidethejungle@spnt.tv. You can also send me your tweets. I'm at Nick Suberlin. You can follow Anthony at CJ Anthony CUI Mickey. He's big on the Twitter. At Houday Fans. And Mr. Scotty B, Beam Me Up Scotty, is at Scott Bantel. Follow these guys. They do a great job. And if you want good fan insight regarding our Bengals, you should give them a follow. They do good work, as always. Final thoughts as we wrap up episode 181, Scott Bantel.
Well, just like I said, getting ready for the draft. I love the draft time. So all this talk about mock drafts, any mock draft, regardless of how terrible it is, I will read. So if anyone puts one out there, no, I will be reading it. But just excited to watch some of the Senior Bowl stuff and start gearing up on the draft.
'Tis the season for the mock draft. It is here, and you will get plenty of them here this offseason, that's for sure. Thank you, Scott, for joining us this week. Appreciate it, as always. Mickey Mentzer, fresh off his trip to Florida. You're looking tan. And
Thank you.
Final thoughts as we wrap up?
I think Scott should do a mock draft for Cincy Jungle. Like full 7 rounds. Just go for it.
Every team.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, just the full thing. Why not?
I will do a mock draft, not 7 rounds.
My final thought is I think that the Super Bowl is going to be a pretty good game. We didn't mention how awesome the Packers-Seahawks game was.
True.
They're still good football to watch. And I don't know, you just hope the Bengals will be in it in the future, and it's interesting to see, you know, the comments now and then to weigh them against, you know, we'll talk about it, you know, in training camp and see what actually happened. Either Anthony's going to be ecstatic that the Bengals, you know, followed his plan and made a splash, or he's going to be pounding his desk again like, this is so stupid that they're doing this. So I'm kind of pumped to see how that shakes out.
I'm pumped as well. Glad you're back, Mick. Thanks again, as always, for joining us on the program. AC, final thoughts, episode 181.
Yeah, I briefly saw that post about the Bengals potentially changing things up and making big changes, and that referring to free agency. And to the points made by Scott and Mickey earlier about Andy Dalton, obviously the Bengals, it sounds like the course of action, at least for 2015, is Dalton is their guy. And that being the case, then the thought I had was then do the free agency thing and do well in the draft again, surround Andy Dalton with as much talent as possible, pay people, and get younger and more athletic to really support him and prop him up as a quarterback that is good but has limitations. So I don't know if that's what they're specifically targeting in terms of free agency, but I hope they do that, add some weapons, and build the depth of this team so that they're not so decimated going into the playoffs like they were this year.
Good take, as always, AC. Appreciate you rushing home from work. I know being on the left coast is difficult for this 8 o'clock start time. Thanks for rushing home and being on the program yet again. Next week, we'll be here Wednesday night, and we'll be talking. We'll give our Super Bowl predictions then, because we have some time to break it down and think about all things Super Bowl XL. And believe it or not, we made it an entire almost 1 hour without mentioning the word Deflategate. Yikes. All right. Before we get out of here, just a reminder, nominate Inside the Jungle for the podcast awards this year. We would really appreciate your nominations. You can fill out the nomination form at podcastawards.com. You can only fill out one form, but we would really appreciate it, again, if you could fill it out again. That web address, podcastawards.com. In the sports category, Inside the Jungle, and the podcast URL is spnt.tv/Inside the Jungle. That's going to do it for episode 181. Thanks to everybody who tuned in live. If you missed our live, if you're listening to us in a podcast form, we record the show every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern right here at cincyjungle.com. And as always, we have on-demand content available via the iTunes Store, Stitcher Smart Radio, the podcast app on iOS. We're pretty much everywhere. And you can always catch our show after the fact in podcast form as well. Before we get out of here, again, I want to especially thank my associate producers, Andy Land, Larry Rolston, and Mike Vardy. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. And for all the latest surrounding the Bengals, the Senior Bowl, check out cincyjungle.com. For AC, Mickey, Scott, I'm Subes. We'll see you next Wednesday night. Hoo day, everybody.
Who day?
Regency.
Good show.
It was good. No calls, but it was good.
My son drew this picture of the bee. He wanted me to show you three. So he's pretty fun. You want to come in here, Ben?
That's awesome. Dude, your kids killed it on the promo video. That was awesome.
Yeah, I'll turn on the speaker so you can hear.
Nick, why don't you scan that and I'll get it up on the site?
All right. I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do that.
There's Andy Dalton Jr. right here. Say hello.
Nice.
What's up, buddy?
You did awesome. Go
If
ahead.
you give me that picture tonight, Nick, I'll make it the cover photo for Bengals Bites tomorrow.
All right, cool. You hear that?
Yeah.
So we say.
You're gonna be famous. You did awesome on the promo video, buddy.
Thank you.
So, Allie, you want to come in here too? Oh, look, now they're not shy anymore. Now they're getting all. I don't know if we can get you in the shot. Here, turn the camera, will you? There we go.
Nice.
Hey.
Say hi.
Hi.
You can't see this, but she is wearing Notre Dame pajamas. Cheer for. Okay, enough of that.
I need to get her some Buckeye pajamas.
She actually would love that, Mickey.
Yeah?
They tease me all the time about liking the Buckeyes, don't you?
I don't.
We're gonna get you some USC PJs.
Go Trojans. No.
But you can only wear them once every 5 years when they're not suspended.
Easy.
They
Come
thought
on.
that you did a good job on the promo video, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are famous.
We're almost to the point where we might be losing some teeth here.
No, you haven't lost a tooth yet?
No.
How old
Which
are they?
one?
6?
They're 6, yeah, going to be 7 in July.
Which teeth?
You show them? She's actually got 2 teeth in there. It's like growing behind it.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing's ready to go.
Yeah,
That's how
just yank it out, Allie. What are you doing?
like
that's
a
how
shark.
you do it.
that's how Parker's was, and she's lost 2, right, Andrea? 2 teeth?
We're getting there, almost.
2 or 3, yeah.
I heard the tooth fairy is adjusted for inflation. She's a lot more generous than she was in my day. So you guys will be stoked once you once you get those things out of there.
Lucky you. All right. Well, it's bedtime. You say bye to everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Uday. Oh yeah, that was fun. The promo video was fun to do too. The kids were troopers.
They were awesome. They didn't stumble or anything, dude. It was awesome.
Well, that's the power of editing, AC. You know, when you're a good director. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're a good director, buddy. You're a good director.
I'm sure you're a slave driver.
Do this take again.
What are you drinking, Mick?
Someone asked me about drinking wine. I'm drinking. It's a beer out of a New Belgium glass. It's
Nice.
definitely not wine.
What beer?
I think it's a Sam Adams Winter Ale.
Nice. I got this one. I don't know if you can see it. The name of it is awful, but it's from Mother Earth Brewing. It's called Cali Cream and Ale. It's freaking ridiculous.
Is it a cream ale or just that's the name?
It's a vanilla cream ale.
Yeah.
It tastes like a sharp cream soda. It's ridiculous.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Oh, it's ridiculous. That winter ale from I don't really like Sam Adams, but like their Oktoberfest I really like, and their winter ale is really good.
Yeah, I got like a sampler pack, so I'm going through those.
Nice. Did you compete in a competition, Mickey? Did I hear that?
A small one. There's a big one on Saturday, and I'm in it. So that should be
For
fun.
what's it called?
CrossFit.
Yeah, CrossFit.
WAD.
Yeah. The WAD, yes.
That's all I know.
Mickey,
Fatal.
where's it at?
The one on Saturday is in Covington.
Okay.
Cool.
Have you ever done P90X, Mickey?
I did.
It's pretty gnarly.
I did it for
Yeah.
3 days, and then I quit.
Yeah.
It's
It's
pretty
hard.
intense.
Yeah, you gotta have like a lot of stuff. You gotta have like a lot of stuff. It's like, okay.
You gotta have a lot of willpower, like, because most of the time you're doing it on your own.
Right.
I'm doing T25 right now. In fact, I may have to get off here a bit to go work it out with Sean T.
Why don't you go paint something?
Fatal, what's up, man?
I'll be doing plenty of painting this weekend.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I don't know if the guys can hear you. Oh, okay, yeah. they
Yeah,
can.
we can hear you.
Fatal.
I missed the show, didn't I?
You did.
Man, that's 3 weeks in a row, man. I feel like crap, man. Been busy.
Hey, I get it. I understand.
You should.
Hey, man, but how you guys holding up after watching what's going on after the Colts got whitewashed?
Should we talk about Deflategate now? So do we want to bring that up now?
Oh, Deflategate, yeah. That's
By the way, if you think that it's just what's happening for the AFC Championship game, you're all crazy.
Right.
Who knows how long they've been deflating footballs?
But it does you no good unless the weather's bad.
No, I still think it helps with the grip no matter what the weather is.
I
Here's
don't
my
know.
question. If the NFL said they were going to suspend Marshawn Lynch for the Super Bowl if he wore the gold shoes, so what are they going to do to the Patriots?
They'll be easy on him, dude. They'll be
If,
easy on him.
if gold shoes equals a suspension, what does cheating mean?
They'll lose a draft pick.
So I have one of my best friends. He grew up in Southern California with me, and he was obsessed with the Red Sox from a young age. So he went to UMass, and then now he lives out there after college. Married a girl, they're out there, and he now has kind of been a transplanted Patriots fan. And he texted me today, and he's like, "This is such crap. I can't believe they're talking about this. This is so dumb." And yeah, in a way it is, because Mickey said it doesn't. Who knows how big of a difference that really makes? But at the same time, you're breaking a rule, and you're breaking a rule again. That's why it's a big story.
Time.
Yeah, that's why it's a big story, because it's who it is. If this was,
yeah, and the
And
question
how
is,
many-
if it's not advantageous, then why would they do it? Why would they risk it?
right.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Is if it doesn't matter much, then why the hell risk your reputation on it? But two, how many times have we heard about teams that go to New England and mysteriously have problems with their headsets?
Right.
Yeah, true. They're doing it. They're probably bending a lot of rules, but that's the thing that gets me tired. Where people say, well, they didn't have to do that. They wiped them off the field, but that's true. But if it's not advantageous, why like we just said, why risk even trying it? If it's not, even if it's a minuscule advantageous move, it's something, you know. And when you got a team that's good, and you're giving them, you know, something where they're kind of messing up the even field, the even play on the field, it does count for something.
No, it is advantageous. It makes the balls easier to grip.
Yep.
You know, the thing is, though, and this may not be popular, but the Patriots could have played with soccer balls when they played the Bengals, and they would have beat us. Like, they were the better team that night. We were just ridiculously bad, and they're one of the hottest teams. So that's why I think it's stupid that they're doing it. Because it's not necessary, but whatever. I mean, I think Belichick just runs that place so insanely that they'll do anything to win. I mean, it's crazy.
Even have murderers play H-back. Who knows?
Right. Nick, we could have talked about the intern for the Bengals stealing all the merchandise. You heard about that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
No?
Yeah, some 21-year-old intern stole like 30 items, game-worn items. Claimed he was doing it as a fan, but then his buddy was selling them all on eBay for a huge profit.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Didn't even know about this.
Hey, Fatal, I don't know if you heard, this was on, he's a guy from your area, Dan Lebitard. He was, I didn't get to hear it, but he was supposed to interview Brad Johnson. I think he went to Florida State. And years ago, Brad Johnson said he paid $7,500 for 100 footballs to be doctored up before the Super Bowl because he knew he wanted them sanded down and kind of worn a little bit so he can get a better grip because he knew that's how he had to play it. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I actually read about it. I actually didn't hear about it locally, but I read about it on Bleacher Report. But I saw it on there, and I saw Lebitard was involved in the story. But yeah, that's crazy. I heard that. That is insane. I heard it on Bleacher Report actually.
He paid money for it. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous.
But is that really? I mean, what can they do about it now?
Nothing. Nothing. But
I think too, where the advantage helps the Patriots is that it's not just Tom Brady, but LeGarrette Blount has a big history with fumbling the football. We saw it last year when he came to town. You know, Carlos Dunlap got him from behind. I think it helps him carrying the football, and so it's not just throwing it and catching it. It's actually just holding on to the football makes it a lot easier.
That was one of the things Lebitard talked about today. He was talking about how the Patriots last year were pretty high in fumbles, especially from the running backs, and this year that's been cut dramatically. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's been cut dramatically, and they think that deflation has something to do with that.
Hey, here's a question. I'm not trying to be funny, but I heard it was 11 of the 12 balls. Were they not able to get to the 12th ball, or did they have to be slick? I don't understand.
Ball. You don't want to kick a deflated ball.
Well, the kicker balls are separate. They have 6 separate kicker balls. They're marked with Ks.
Yeah.
So
even for punts?
On purpose? That they did 11 of the 12?
Maybe he heard somebody coming.
Even for punts, on Nick?
What's that, Mickey?
Even for punts?
Yeah, even for punts. Every ball that's kicked is marked with the K. That's a kicker ball.
Fatal, it would be too obvious if they did 12 of 12. They had to leave one in there to, so they could try to claim it wasn't on purpose.
I just think that once is okay, got it. 2 times, okay. And now this is the 3rd time where they are blatantly breaking the rules. To me, I think you've got to send a hard, clear message to the Patriots that this doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
How does Sean Payton get suspended for a year for Bountygate? Which, let's be honest, every team is doing some version of what the Saints were doing. Maybe they're doing of what the Patriots are doing, but that is essentially still operating within the game itself, whereas the Patriots are cheating. I mean,
Yeah.
it's calling into question the integrity of the game.
Part of the problem with Sean Payton is that he lied initially to the commissioner, and then it came out that I turned a blind eye. So that all factors in. So I just think they need
Belichick lied to him too.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't think that draft picks are enough. I don't think it's a deterrent. I think you got to hit them with salary cap, and I think I think draft picks would be nice.
But 20 draft picks every year.
Right.
There's two things that kind of upset me about it. It's, I guess the moralist in me is kind of like, what? I guess do nice guys just always finish last? You just got to be a jerk and break rules, and even if it's a slight advantage, that's what you have to do to get ahead in the NFL, a league that's based on parity. But the second thing on it is, I mean, you talked about how Sean Payton lied, but the Patriots already have broken some pretty big rules, have gotten punished for it, and they still do this even after it. That's like a spit in the face to people who, I mean, the league itself and the people who disciplined them before. Those are the things where I kind of, I mean, even if it's a small infraction, it still kind of irritates me that it's like, you know this is wrong, you've already been caught for doing other things wrong, and you're still doing this. I don't know. That upsets me a little bit.
So here's the question: do you guys think that they're getting so much of an outpour from the public because people have a perception that they hate them because they're so successful? Would you guys feel the same way if it were the Bengals and we got caught doing something minuscule? Would you want us to be punished?
It's to me, it's both. Yeah, to me, it's both. I think it's public perception doesn't like that team, not only because they're successful and they're envious, but it's also because, I mean, Bill Belichick's a jerk. In every press conference, he's terse. He doesn't treat people well. Tom Brady kind of comes off as arrogant, and I guess maybe that's a little deserved because he's, a pretty fantastic football player. But I think that's why there's a big outcry. But it's also the fact that they're repeat offenders in this thing, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of get upset. And this wouldn't be a story if the Packers were caught doing it or the Seahawks were caught doing it. It might be a story if the Bengals were, because of all the stuff with the arrests and stuff that happened in the mid and late 2000s. But a lot of other teams, this probably wouldn't gain as much momentum as it currently is.
Let's also keep in mind that we wouldn't even be talking about this if Tom Brady doesn't throw an interception to DeQuell Jackson. It would have gone unnoticed and nobody would have known.
Right. I'm just hearing mixed stuff on this. Like, I hear they were fine before. I heard that they were deflated before kickoff, and then they told them to reinflate them. Then they were fine, and they were deflated again before halftime. There's so many different things I'm hearing about this thing, and if they were deflated and then reinflated and then deflated again for the second half, that to me is that's pretty lousy. I mean, if that's what really happened. I don't know if that's for sure what happened, but that's pretty lousy.
I think Lane Kiffin says the ball boy was acting on his own, right, Anthony?
Lane Kiffin. Oh, Lord. Lane Kiffin.
Hey, Anthony, I don't know if it was you, but that just said this, but maybe since you have to be a jerk to get ahead, maybe the Bengals need to go ahead and sign the Ndamukong Suh to stomp some fools out. Maybe we'll start winning.
Yeah, I'd love it, man. He plays the same kind of position that Geno does, but can never have enough good defensive linemen, and you gotta. It's kind of the deal with, aside from the Patriots, you look at these other teams like the Steelers and the Ravens. They're a team kind of full of jerks. I mean, Antonio Brown kicks a punter in the face on a return, and nothing happens. I guess it's a league that's built on, I don't know, kind of some bullying and gnarly play, but I don't know.
Yeah, but if we signed Ndamukong Suh, I mean, what are we going to do with Pecco? I mean, how do you sit a guy with such great productivity?
I don't know. Well, do you want Suh, Fatal?
I would like it, man. I know it would tie in some money and it would complicate a couple things maybe with AJ, but I know you can hold on to AJ for a while, and I saw some financial breakdown where we can possibly afford him too. And it all depends on Dalvin. His money still be on the books in a few years if we want to move with him. And yeah, but I'm all for it, man. You know what? The window is not that big, man. And if you can get a game changer like Sue to go with, could you imagine if Geno got healthy again? What that tandem? That would probably be the greatest tandem you would have seen if in a long time. So I'm all for it, and it would also save you a draft choice, and you can go elsewhere with the draft choice instead of having to fill that need immediately and develop a guy.
Mickey, who would you target top in the free agent market?
That's tough, man, and I haven't even looked at it, but I'd probably go. Man, that's a rough one. Maybe. Do you go tackle? Do you go offensive line?
You mean in the draft?
No, I'm talking free agent.
Oh, I don't think there's anyone out there that replaces Whitworth or Smith. Do you?
See, that's the thing. I don't know who's out there, but I mean, Smith didn't. We missed him. That's a long career. I think Bodine. I think he's going to be a solid center for a while. Do you look at receiver? I mean, Marvin Jones staying healthy.
There's a couple of them out there.
When Sanu,
Jeremy Maclin, man, he'd fill a return need and a slot receiver type of need too.
He will, but is that the right fit for the quarterback we have? I don't know. And then, I mean, what linebackers are available? I mean, if there was a solid linebacker, I'd pull the trigger on that in a second.
Yeah, I was looking at it before. There really isn't.
I missed the question, but you talked about like, I know it's going to complicate AJ and his contract deal. I agree. I think that the Bengals will do whatever it takes to keep AJ, probably franchise. I think it's probably going to take a franchise tag and then a long-term deal is probably what's going to have to happen. But I don't know. That's an excuse. So many teams find ways to get creative with the cap. They find ways to bring in these high-profile guys that are expensive and still remain competitive. I would like to see the Bengals do that. Was the question fatal? Who would they target in free agency? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, I was asking.
Would you guys be good with bringing in Sue in particular?
Yeah. I want to see them get a guy to fill a slot receiver role. I like Dane Sonsenbacher as a guy. He's kind of clutch at certain moments, but he hasn't really shown that he's a consistent slot receiver in the NFL. There's been injuries and inconsistency at tight end that you could kick into the slot. So I'd like to see him get – I mean, I know there's kind of some mixed feelings on Andrew Hawkins, but I'd like to see him get kind of that athletic, shorter, smaller, quicker guy that can navigate through the middle of the field and make some plays. So that's one guy – that's one position I hope that they look at.
The thing with Sonsenbacher, and the thing he did so well at Ohio State, and when he's played for the Bengals, especially against Detroit in that game, like he finds a way to get open. They just don't use him. You know what I mean? They'll showcase him in the preseason. He'll do awesome, and then nothing. Nothing in the regular season. He doesn't even get the snaps. So I wish they would give him more of a shot, but they don't.
Yeah, it could be him. It could very well be him. That's one position I think they need to start. They had nothing from that, especially when Marvin Jones went out and then Sanu had to go outside, and they just tried to put it together in different ways and it just was not working. So I would like to see them. He is a chain mover for sure. I don't know. I'd like to see him figure that out.
Did you guys hear, man? We're gonna use Burkhead as a slot receiver, man. That's receiver right there.
Looks like it.
There you go.
I'm about to run an article. I'd love them to sign Knighton. I mean, Knighton's going to pull double teams, and that lets Atkins, get free on single.
Pot roast?
But he has weight issues, they said. I saw something about he couldn't. They couldn't keep him from getting fat.
Hell yeah, he has weight issues. That's why he takes up 2 blockers.
Yeah, they say that he got fined a lot for the Broncos for not meeting the weight requirement that they have for him. He was ballooning up a lot bigger than they wanted him to be, and he was a little ineffective at times. So they say.
I'll take him.
But Mick, I know the big name offensive lineman. I think one was Bulaga and the other one was Lupati, but I don't think they're going anywhere.
Upati might be gone. I've heard they're not going to re-sign him, but that could be just total rumor mill stuff. I don't know.
And here's other two scenarios I meant to ask you guys about. I didn't get to call the show, but I was wondering if you guys were, because I heard stories about, I don't know if it's fantasies, but they said Mike Johnson might get cut for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they say that both the team and he miss playing with one another. So I was wondering if you guys were for bringing him back, or if you were for maybe also going for a big name guy like maybe Pierre Paul in New York or whatever.
Oh boy. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say, I mean, Jason Pierre-Paul doesn't do a whole lot for me. I don't really see him as a fit for this team. I would go after Michael Johnson before him if Johnson were available.
Yeah, I think if Johnson was available, I'd love the Bengals to spring for him. Not at the contract he's at, but I'd like them to get him. A couple other guys, I would like to see them maybe look at Brandon Graham from the Eagles. I think he'd be a better fit in the 4-3 than the 3-4-ish that he's kind of playing. And then I still want to see him get a young, quick guy in the draft. So Amos has a question though. What's up, Amos?
Oh, thank you. So my question is about Burfict. Is anyone kind of weirded out about the whole situation, or is it just me? Because it seemed like he was coming back last year, and now Lewis is still kind of being vague about the whole situation, that he hopes that he's going to play next year. Or maybe I'm just looking into it too much, but it just seems kind of weird to me.
Good question. I'm looking at Mickey, but he's.
I don't think he'll. I mean, I don't think there's any chance he won't play, but I think it's just another. It just shows us another way that the Bengals medical staff mishandled an injury, which is they always do that. I mean, they'll put a guy day to day that ends up getting IR 6 weeks later. It's just right. Or Eifert. I mean, it happens all the time. It started with. I mean, the one I really remember is Rich Bram. They had him on day to day. Bruised knee. Turned out the bones were separated, rubbing against each other. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
It turned out to be a broken leg, didn't it?
Yes.
You know, another one. Remember Chris Perry with his never-ending hernia?
Yes.
That went on for like, I don't know, an entire season. Or Levi Jones and his knee that I think maybe sawdust now.
Right. Yeah, two words, Amos. Antonio Bryant. That was another guy they misjudged on, but supposedly I think it was after that 2010 contract Marvin got, they said they were gonna revamp the medical staff. They did. Things were going pretty well, I think, for the most part, but this year it was like it seemed like misdiagnosis after misdiagnosis, and if Burfict can't continue on, it's a killer, and it's kind of along the same lines of some of these big guys that just kind of get wrong information, I guess. And I think he'll be okay. I think they just kind of said there are too many things going on with this guy this year. Concussions, neck, the knee, and they just said, let's just not even chance it. And I'm hopeful that he'll come back. I don't know exactly what it is that's being done, but it's a shame when you do a procedure and then you have to redo something again when you've already done something. And I'm sure you'll hear if he has another thing done, they'll tell you, oh, everything went great. But you're going to have to wait till probably training camp to see what he's doing.
Yeah, that's why I kind of want us to get number 52 for my Hurricanes, man, Denzel Perryman. That guy would help us out in the linebacking core.
What round is he projected to go in, Fatal?
It fluctuates. I see sometimes late first, but at worst I think he's maybe beginning to mid second round at worst.
Yeah.
He could be a guy that falls due to size, but I think he'll. Some project him as a late first. You know, it all depends. I think we'll have 2 guys going to first maybe, but I know he'll probably be that guy on the cusp. I think the second round is realistic though.
Denzel Perryman, you said?
Yeah, Denzel Perryman on 52, man. He's a hitter. He's an enforcer. He's an intimidator. He runs sideline to sideline. I mean, he's awesome, man. He helped us with that depth for sure.
One other thing, and this may be playing into the whole free agency attitude that the Bengals have this year, is they had guys hurt coming into this year, and they said, hey, you know what, timetable says they'll be ready for the regular season, maybe parts of training camp, and they'll be fine and they'll be their old selves. Well, they relied on that this year, and Hall and Atkins weren't the same guys. And I think this year they're probably saying, you know what, we now have Eifert hurt, we have Burfict hurt, we have those same 2 guys still on the mend a little bit. We can't just sit here and rely on injured guys coming back and being the same guys. We got to do some different stuff. So maybe that's where they look a little bit. I don't know.
Anthony, how pissed are you going to be if we get all pumped up about these free agency changes, big signings, and they go their same old route?
I'd be pretty upset. That's can't talk a big game and not back it up. You know, I mean, I'd be pretty upset.
Like eat a boot upset?
No. I'm not. I'm a free agency guy a little bit, but not extreme. I feel like you have to make moves for a variety of reasons. The number one reason is to better your team, and even if it's a roll of the dice, you got to better your team how you think it's possible. And number 2, I mean, if you do sign a big guy, and this is a lesser reason, and it's not the best reason, but it does stir up a fan base. It does give them a little more interest in the team. Like, hey, this team is making moves to improve the football team, and it kind of inspires a fan base a little bit. And I think you've seen some apathy from the Bengals fans over the past couple years because they haven't signed the big guy or a big guy. So I think now this year some real weaknesses were exposed, and I think if fans see that the Bengals sit back on their hands again, even after that, I think they'd be a little upset.
I don't know if there was a lot last year to really improve the team. There's a lot. If you look at this year's free agency class, there is especially on the defensive line, there's some people they could make a move to get that would make a difference.
Yep.
If they don't at least put a good effort into improving that line through free agency, I'd be a little pissed.
Mickey, you got a question from Amos.
I see it. Do I think Hall is worth his contract? That's
No.
a tough one. That's a tough one because Leon Hall kind of falls in that Terrence Newman mode where he's such a vet that he plays smarter, not trying to cover the guy so close. He tackles well, but he's definitely not the player he used to be. But he still does pretty good for most of the season. So I don't know. I don't think you cut him out right here, but you got to start phasing him out.
They got to adjust his contract, though, man.
I don't think they will. I don't think they will, and I think this year you just eat it. But
it counts as like 7.7 against the cap.
Yeah, but why would he negotiate that?
I think I'm not saying he would, but yeah.
What's that, Miles?
Well, because I think the thought is you can extend it out and get more guaranteed money over more years, or you can just get cut and take less. So I think there could be an incentive for him to just spread it out.
Yeah, but he's got to be. He's close to being done. So what's his play? I guess. I mean, they could renegotiate and extend it and throw this big number out there that'll never get, but I don't know.
I mean, I would think he would realize that if they cut him, he's not likely to get. He might get signed, but he's not going to get much money.
Yeah, I think he's another guy probably hang on to for this year, especially if they're going to rely on the young guys. You got to have a little bit of an insurance policy there, a veteran guy. and they love him. I mean, they love him. I don't think he's worth his contract. I think, like what Mickey said, I think you restructure it, make it a little more team-friendly, but still pay him pretty well. I think if you lose Geathers' contract, potentially Pico's contract, and you restructure Hall, that even opens up even more space for you to do something with Green, potentially, and then still make some splashes in free agency. I think that's kind of where you immediately look. But I think Hall's going to be a Bengal next year. I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't cut him. I would just try to rework that contract.
Yeah.
Anthony, man, what's up? Mays needs to be a Bengal, man, and he needs to get a couple more plays, man. What's going on with Taylor Mays? He's like an enigma, man. He's solid, but he just doesn't get his time.
I wish I knew. I think he's more. I don't know if this makes sense or not, but I think he's more of an athlete than a football player. I mean, I think you look at him, he's probably one of the most physically imposing guys you've ever seen. I mean, dude is built, but when it comes to football savviness and football IQ, he doesn't seem to have it. He did play that, what was there was a game where he was relied on because of injury.
A linebacker.
Yeah, and he ended up playing pretty well.
You shut down Randall Cobb, one of the better receivers.
Yeah, and he ended up playing pretty well, but I don't know.
Mike Zimmer, man. Mike Zimmer left with Taylor Mays' role.
I'm telling you, I think the Vikings are going to be pretty good the next couple of years. I think if they get I was telling somebody this the other day, if they figure out what's going on at running back and they get a big-time wide receiver, that team's going to be probably pretty good, I think. They had a late run.
Yeah, Bridgewater is going to be big time, man. He's going to be.
Let me toss this out to you guys real quick, and then I gotta go. What do you think about the idea of trading AJ Green this year or next?
Oh, blasphemy, man! That's blasphemy.
Are you saying entertaining trading him? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
For what? For J.J. Watt? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you would think you could get a good amount of high picks for him. You know, at least a first rounder and something else. And I don't know that they're going to re-sign him. There's not any guarantee they're going to re-sign him. And two, I mean, and lastly is, you know, sinking big money into a wide receiver is pretty much a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think
if you look at every team that's done it, it doesn't work.
Right.
Every time they do it though, and it doesn't work, it's the third contract. It's when they're in that 8 to 10 year range. It's not when or there's been a devastating quarterback problem like Larry Fitzgerald, and it didn't pay off. But I think you give him one more deal, let him play for about 8 years here, and then maybe towards the end of that deal, you look at trading or not re-signing him at that point. I think he's too young, too big, too good to cast him off right now, especially for unknown draft picks.
And look at what he means to this offense, man. That's also what we have to look at, man. He means a lot to this offense or any offense. Could you imagine A.J. Green with the Patriots? Could you imagine the difference that a receiver like that can make if in the right situation? I'm with you, Scotty, that alone, they can't throw the ball to themselves, but when you have a quarterback that somewhat understands, which Dalton sometimes has been, if Dalton can get it together and be more consistent, A.J. Green, his presence alone is worth the money, let alone what he does in terms of his athleticism and just catching the ball.
Yeah, but think about this for a second. The Patriots, in their Super Bowl wins, never won with Randy Moss, and I would say take a look at the last 10, 12 years of Super Bowl champions and find one Super Bowl champion that had a dominant receiver.
But they all had dominant quarterbacks. That's the point.
No. What about Joe Flacco? Trent Dilfer?
18-0.
I mean,
do we discount that they went 18-0 with Randy Moss and it took a crazy helmet catch and a beastly D-line performance to beat them? I mean, it did affect and make their offense that much more deadly. and he had the go-ahead winning touchdown in the Super Bowl prior to Manning having that drive. So I mean, I get what you're saying, but we got to take that into account too. He had a big contribution to that 18-0 record. I mean, that was a historic team for Eli.
What would Russell Wilson do with A.J. Green? I mean, he's got Doug Baldwin. He's got was it Curse? I mean, what would Russell Wilson do with A.J. Green?
Well, but that's my point is what he would do is he wouldn't have as good of a defense. Like, I mean, he won it with Golden Tate as his top receiver. So that's what I'm saying is, you know, these teams that win it, they don't have dominant receivers.
Well, if you don't have a dominant receiver, you got to have a dominant quarterback. I mean, that's so if you're gonna cast off A.J. Green, you better and you get draft picks. You better use one of those high draft picks on a quarterback then, because.
But let's look at the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, is Dez Bryant or DeMarco Murray more important to that team? If the fact that it's a discussion tells you how great a receiver can be.
Yeah, but I mean, it goes back to, again, take a look at what have they accomplished with Dez Bryant. I mean, yeah, he puts up big numbers, but what have they done?
Oh, I mean, without the BS overturn, I mean, they could be in the NFC Championship game. And he made that play.
Are you saying this all hypothetical because
yes.
A.J. Green didn't have a good season?
No, I'm just saying, you know, they got to make a decision. Do they give him the big money, you know, or do they let him walk in free agency? The alternative would be, you know, if they can't get him signed, you don't want him to walk for nothing, so you would trade him.
There are positions that Mike Brown pays elite money to, and it's quarterback, it's wide receiver, and it's tackle. I mean, that's just how it is. So I see Green here for another year beyond 2015 on the franchise tag, if not 2 for the franchise tag. And then if they still can't get a deal going, then they might let him walk. But I don't think he's going anywhere, especially not 2016 when they can apply the first year of the tag with him. I think he's getting at least one franchise tag if they can't get a deal with him. And you know, there's a lot of talk about, hey, does he actually want to play here? Does he want to play with Dalton? I mean, he's on a pretty good team, and if he gets paid and he's on a pretty good team, I don't know.
I mean, do you guys remember also that year that Larry Fitzgerald went on that crazy run when he had Kurt Warner in the playoffs, where he had like a historic playoff, like he was just catching everything.
Yep.
And he made some of the biggest plays in that Super Bowl against the Steelers, and another person who one-upped him was the wide receiver Antonio Holmes. I mean, the receivers can have an effect. I know what you're saying, Scotty, that maybe if you're not going to re-sign him, get something for him because he's monstrous, but I mean, they do have an effect on the champions, or they do have an effect on potentially winning the plays, but it's just, you remember the James Harrison interception. I mean, despite certain plays that they can't control, like a James Harrison interception, like the San Antonio Holmes catch, there's certain things that the receivers, when they stepped up and had their dominant performances, set them up to win. Randy Moss set up the Patriots to win. If you remember the Plaxico Burress for the Giants, he was a big-name receiver, and he had a hellacious Super Bowl. I mean, he completely put in work against the Patriots. So I mean, it can go either way. I think a big-name wide receiver can do it for you. Look at Michael Irvin. Look at Jerry Rice. Look what those guys did for those Super Bowl contenders and winners for years.
Yeah, the whole plan with Dalton, if the Bengals had this much foresight, they said, hey, Dalton is the guy we're going to target in the second. We know he's got some limitations compared to other guys in this draft. We're going to surround him with the most talented offensive player in this draft that we feel that we can get. I mean, you can argue Cam Newton was in that draft if you want, but at number 4, we're going to surround him with the most outstanding offensive talent. We're going to get a wide receiver, and we're going to couple him with a quarterback. So this young guy who may struggle has a guy that he can consistently throw to. And going back to your point, Fatal, about Fitzgerald, do you remember that? I think it was against the Panthers that same year, the NFC Championship game, when the Panthers, I think, still had Jake Delhomme. Larry Fitzgerald took over that game. I mean, absolutely took over that game. And these are outliers. I get it. You either got to have a great quarterback that can make other receivers better, and if you don't have a quarterback that can do that, you got to surround him with a lot of different talent. So
Yeah, but I mean, Dalton does end up getting into a lot more trouble because of Green, because of the way he does force the ball to him. And then second, do you see Green having that same type of winning and take over the game attitude that Larry Fitzgerald has? I don't.
No,
I don't.
but
I don't
he's not
see
that
that
type of person.
personality.
But
He doesn't have that
That's
quarterback,
part
though.
of my point.
there's a couple people, like poor Josh and Kurt. I'm sorry, we're chatting and they're not saying anything. I mean, there were a couple people that had the audacity, especially like Marshall Falk, who said, I think Andy Dalton might be better off in this Indianapolis playoff game without A.J. Green in the lineup because he's not going to force balls to Green and not make plays. They scored, 10 points, 13 points in that game? I mean, you mean to tell me that A.J. Green wouldn't be able to open up that field a little bit, maybe even score a touchdown and make that game a bit more competitive?
Yeah, but
I don't
mean,
know.
he did well with that.
Come on.
I mean, he did well without him earlier in the year, but he had some of his other weapons he didn't have in Indy.
Right.
So, I mean, I see what you're saying, AC. But, you get rid of Green, but you still have other pretty good receivers, just not that dominant one. I think he'd be all right.
And what's up, Kurt, by the way?
No, it's sorry. This is a dumb hypothetical question. Like, why would you get rid of the best receiver on your team? I mean, the fact that A.J. Green or Andy Dalton might go through his first read and try to force the ball to A.J. Andy's trying to force the ball to A.J. Green. Like, that's not on A.J. It's not like, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't be as good, so you don't try to throw the ball to me so much.
Right.
Like, he's a good guy on the team. They absolutely need him, Scott. And the fact that you're even entertaining the idea, like you pay that man money to stay in Cincinnati. You need that wide receiver. Like, you need to eat and you need to drink water because he is the superstar on that offense right now.
I think I'm going to write this. I'm going to write this article just for Kurt.
The only way you don't. Scott's going to write an article for you.
I'm going to write an article on it now just for Kurt.
Do it just for me.
I can actually see like the steam come out of his head when it goes up on the site.
Dear Kurt Campbell.
Put me in there too, Scotty. I'm pissed too, man. I can't believe you, man.
The only way you do it. The only way you do it.
You're gonna turn Fatal and I into alcoholics. We're drinking later tonight.
Tell him, Kurt. Let's trade Burfict too, then. Damn it.
Here's the only way you do it. If I'm sitting here and I'm the Bengals, especially if it's when this current contract expires, if you are in negotiations with him and you're saying there is no way that we are able to come to an agreement with him, then you start considering that, and then on top of that, if you get a king's ransom like what Mike Ditka offered the Bengals that one draft when they wanted to get Akili Smith, and Ditka wanted to go up to get Ricky Williams or whatever, and he supposedly offered the Bengals a ton of stuff. If that scenario plays out, then you think about it. But
what about this one? Would you go for this one?
No.
So the money that you hold on. So you trade him for an upper echelon pick this year. You take Amari Cooper, and you get a second round pick, and you use the money that you saved from A.J. Green to sign Ndamukong Suh and another big player on defense. Are you better with that scenario than A.J. Green?
No.
That's a great question. If you're going off potential, but is Cooper hasn't done what A.J. has done.
Understand?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think A.J. had an off year. A.J. was injured a lot. He didn't look good on the field when he was on the field. I think that he did not have a top 5 receiver year, but I feel as potential, he's still a top 5 receiver. And I mean, I'm sorry, if you had Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or any of those what you would consider elite quarterbacks on your team, would you be like, I just don't feel like paying him, so you can go? No, yeah. I mean, like, obviously quarterbacks and wide receivers are two different like enigmas, but still, I mean, like, that's like one of the best athletes at that position in the world, and you're like, do I want to pay him? And it's like, well, if you want one of the best receivers in the world, then yeah, you're going to pay him. And I think that this is a franchise that needs him.
This is a guy that's on pace. Whether this is jumping the gun or not, he's on pace for a Hall of Fame career. So, I mean, and granted, some of that is because of the production of Andy Dalton. I mean, Dalton's fed him the ball, and AJ's made plays, but AJ is on pace to be a Hall of Fame player. If he keeps it up and even relatively close to the pace that he's been at and still makes Pro Bowls, whether they're deserved or not. I mean, he's going to be a Hall of Fame player if he has a long career. So I think you hang on to him for the good chunk of his career. Like I said, I think you sign him to one more deal, and then towards the end of that deal, that's when you start exploring it, even if you get a little less on a trade for him.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question, Scotty. Let me see if this is a fair question. If we were to do that scenario, right, if we were to get rid of AJ Green to maybe get Cooper and get Ndamukong Suh, who do you think would have more of an effect on the game as an individual, Ndamukong Suh or AJ Green?
Ndamukong Suh, hands down.
In the way that offenses throw the ball up and down the field, you think that Ndamukong Suh will make more of an individual effect on the Bengals?
Take a look at the games that AJ Green's played in the playoffs this year. How much effect has he had, or over his career? How much effect has he had?
Well, that's
not like they're throwing in the ball and
you're
he's
right
dropping
about that. You're right about that, but that goes hand in hand with the quarterback. How does Andy Dalton look?
Well, I mean, he's had some big drops in those games, so yeah, Dalton hasn't been great, but Green's also had drops. Look, my hypothetical has nothing to do with how good Green is. I think Green had a fine year. I like him. I'm just saying. Are you better? Are you better
Apparently
off?
You've already got your AJ Green jersey burning in the trash can behind you somewhere.
No, I'm saying if you want to start player, that's fine. But if your goal is to win a championship, I'm saying, are you better off having decent receivers and a better, let's say, defensive line instead of a star receiver and a mediocre defensive line? I think history would tell us that better defensive and offensive lines win more championships than receivers.
The way this, go ahead, bud.
I think a fun, interesting comparison that might happen in this offseason is the whole Marshawn Lynch and Seattle Seahawks. Like, he is their star player on offense. I mean, you can say, yeah, Russell Wilson is a good quarterback. I wouldn't say he's elite, at least not yet. And there aren't any wide receivers on that team that I would consider a top 5 receiver, maybe top 10, depending on the season. But, like, Marshawn Lynch, like, he is their star offensive player. And, there are all these reports, like, before the playoffs and stuff that, they hadn't talked to Marshawn about, an extension and that his thing is up at the end of the year. Like, what are they going to do with him? Like, do they not want to pay Beast Mode his money to bring him back next year and continue, anchoring down that offense? Now, I mean, that's completely different between A.J. Green and Marshawn Lynch, but A.J. Green is our Marshawn Lynch. Like, he is our star player on offense right now. Like, he's the best offensive player we have.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head. And also, let's look at the impact that A.J. has had as the second he jumped on the field, man. Let's give him a little more credit. A lot of these 10-win, 11 wins, and our gradual, us getting gradually better has a lot to do with A.J. Green. I mean, he's putting up historic numbers with a very inconsistent quarterback. I mean, he's been to 4 straight Pro Bowls every year. Maybe he quite didn't deserve it this year. He got it probably off a name this year, but I mean, he's been the 3 years before that. He was putting up Randy Moss. I mean, historic numbers, and he's doing this with a little bit above average quarterback if you asked a random person, or maybe average at worst. So I mean, he's a very much a big reason. Also with the defense, I give the defense a lot of credit, but he's very much the reason why we've gotten as many wins we've gotten, especially in the running game up until this year. And who's his number 2 guy that he's had that you can say, oh, that's his number 2 for sure. He's kind of in the same realm as Calvin Johnson. He never really had a second guy, and at least Johnson now has Golden Tate, but Johnson was hurt this year. He's never had that Golden Tate kind of guy. Maybe Marvin Jones, but I mean that was very iffy in itself.
Well, okay, so here's my 2 cents. And I'm a very big, I guess, Dalton supporter, if you will. But realistically, I think AJ is clearly our best player, and you got to keep a guy like that. Sometimes I think, as fans, we forget how special he really is. Because you could put him on any team and he's going to start. You could put him on any team and he's going to instantly make them better. The way I look at our offense, if you have AJ, right, at receiver, and you have Hill and Gio in the backfield, you can have an average quarterback, which is easy to find. You're not going to find another Green out there, so I don't think the trade is worth it in terms of money, if that's really what it's about. Because the way I feel is that if you have AJ on the outside and Hill in the backfield, we can have an average quarterback and be great. Because think about it. If you look at this year overall, our offense had a down year. Our defense had a down year. But somehow we still made it to the playoffs. So I feel, we're not that far off. It's just it comes down to consistency and just getting over that hump. But I definitely think you get rid of Dalton before you get rid of AJ.
Yeah, the way the team is currently comprised, I don't think you can. I mean, you're talking about losing Gresham, and there's some bad points of Gresham. Don't get me wrong, but he's kind of especially this year, he's basically been a second or third receiver on this team, and if you get rid of him, you don't know what's going on with Marvin Jones. Sanu has his ups and downs. If you get rid of AJ and you get picks, you better say you get 3 picks, 2 of those better be on wide receivers. So I don't know. Go for it, Kurt.
No, I'm just saying I'm heading out. It was fun chatting with you guys. I should probably do my job.
Nah, dude. Just chill. Don't worry about your job.
I'll stick around in the chat room.
He's flagging planes in right now.
That's right.
Kurt, man, make sure you read that article and comment.
I will. I'll be doing it with a stiff bourbon in my hand.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Just don't break your screen when reading it.
Hey, Fatal, is tequila your go-to?
Tequila? No, man. Actually not. If I want to get really wasted, yeah, it gets the job done. But man, that's a great question. I think mine is my go-to may be rum.
Okay. You had a profile picture where you were sipping on a tasty-looking margarita. That's why I was. Yeah. You know what? I'm lying. I do. The tequila is pretty good. It might be my go-to. I might change that. I'm lying because I just had some last weekend. I'm lying to you.
All right,
man.
guys, I gotta bounce. I'll talk to you next week.
It was amazing. Those margaritas are incredible. I mainly do the margaritas with the 1800.
See you, Scotty.
See you, boys.
If you two want to hang out a little bit, I'll hang for a couple more minutes if you want.
Yeah, man. Yeah. 2 more minutes, man. I won't take up too much of your time, man. How you been though, man? How's everything in the house, man?
Oh Lord, that's a great question. We're undergoing some remodeling stuff, doing a little new move-in projects. I'm a little proud of this one. I'll have to do a show around it, but we're building this. They had the built-in unit here, and it used to be more of like a TV cabinet thing that was built into the wall, and because that was more built a long time ago for more of the big bulky TVs, and we've mounted our flat screen above. We're turning that thing into a bar with like a kegerator and a wine fridge and stuff. So pretty stoked on it, but it's like, I don't know if you've had house projects done, but it's like, ugh. it's kind of stressful, but kind of making the place our own. I appreciate you asking.
That's good, man. I like to hear it. You're getting along with your neighbors and everything. That's very important too, man.
Yeah, it is, and that's probably going to help. A little built-in bar,
Yeah, man. Hey, when I'm definitely gonna make it to Cali this year, man. I'm gonna come over there and see you, man.
For sure. Amos, did you say you're getting married or you got married recently in Vegas, right?
Yeah. So last April, I did get married in Vegas.
Okay.
April 12th, actually.
And you're doing your anniversary out there this April.
Yes, it all works out. So I will be there for sure.
Is that?
That's cool, man.
That's the podcast award time?
It is. I think he
Nice.
said it was on the 13th, so we gotta
Nice.
make it happen.
Nice. Fatal, you got to come out, dude.
Oh, I'll definitely come out, man. That'd be my priority, man, to come out there and see what's going on with you, man.
You been to Vegas?
No, man, I want to go so bad, though, man.
Oh.
My boys went a couple months back, but we were understaffed at work, and I had to, right when they went, is right when one of the guys got sick.
Well, I mean, it's not like Miami's boring, so.
Yeah, I know, right? For me, I'm here in Miami. I wish I was.
Exactly.
Miami, man?
Yeah.
You ever been to Miami?
What's that?
You ever been to Miami?
Me?
Yeah.
I've never been. No, I want to go badly.
Oh man. Yeah,
I thought about going to that game you went to last year, the Halloween game. The Dolphins. I thought about going out there for that, but I just couldn't swing it.
That was a brutal game, man. You just be glad you didn't go. It was a great experience. I think the best part was seeing that Gio run.
Yeah, that was.
That run was amazing, man. That was amazing to see in person. But that safety was not. I had Dolphins fans jumping in my face, pointing at me. It was horrible.
God.
I was talking trash during the game, even when we were down. I was like, "We'll be back, and you guys will be heartbroken." And then we ended up losing with the safety. They were in my face, and I couldn't walk out the stadium.
Are Dolphins fans pretty mellow, or are they kind of jerks, or what?
They're mellow, man. They're chill. They can take it, but also they can give it too. But they're very chill. They're very mellow. I was in the Bengals section, so the Dolphins fans there were really cool. I was right behind the Bengals sideline.
Nice. Amos, where'd you get married in Vegas? What place?
Paris.
Nice. Stayed there a lot. It's a good spot.
Yeah, I mean it's relatively cheap. I mean it's not as what you would, or as far as the price, it's not as much as what you would think it would be. But I definitely think we all should just meet up. It should be a good time. It's really cheap to get out there. So
yeah, the cool thing about Paris is, you go out there to Vegas, and there's some big spots and hotels and clubs that you're like, all right, we got to go here. But Paris is like smack in the middle of the entire strip. It's like right there. So even if you don't really want to stay in Paris, it's like, all right, that's fine. We can walk wherever,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you ever been to Miami, Amos?
Actually, I've drove through it a couple times, but I've been to Florida several different times. I just never actually stayed in Miami, but I'm definitely interested. So if they ever play down there again, I'll definitely. I guess it'll be there back in 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah,
I've been
to Tampa and Orlando. Amos, is that anywhere? It's probably relatively close, right?
Yeah, it's about 2 hours from Miami. It's Orlando is about 2 hours. Tampa's maybe 3.
Okay. So funny story, dude. I don't know if I told you this, but my wife and I went on a cruise out of Orlando to the Caribbean, and on our flight back, of course, because the weather there, Orlando is 75 and thunderstorms, so the flight was delayed. But in the airport bar, we were sitting there having a couple drinks, waiting. And this guy's next to us, and we're like, dude, who? I'm like, I know that guy, but I can't. I know he's famous. I don't know how, but then people started coming up to him, taking pictures with him. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know this guy. And finally, I look over at him, like, dude, that's Doc Rivers, and he's like 4 seats away from me. And this kid comes up and wants a picture with him, and he's like, hey, because I was sitting as the closest to him. He's like, can you take a picture for us? I'm like, sure. And I took a picture, and he's like, he was nice to everybody, and I didn't bug him. But as they called our flight, I was like, hey, I know who you are. I wasn't going to bug you for a picture, but go Clippers this year. It was like the year he was just brought on as the Clippers coach. And he's like, thanks, man. And so, of course, he's first class, so he gets boarded first. And I go on. I'm in line filing into the plane after, and he sees me as we're walking. He's all, hey. Because he was having a little drink himself, and he's all, hey, not a bad way to spend a pre-flight, right? Like having a couple drinks. And I'm like, nah, not at all, man. And he's like, all right. And he gives me a high five on the way by. I'm like, dude, this guy's cool. I got to pull for this guy. He's cool.
Yeah, he's a down-to-earth guy, man. He seems that way in interviews, and he just seems sincere. He seems like a people person.
Yeah, I think he lives out there, and then obviously he commutes back to LA. But pretty cool.
You know what's crazy is I actually met Rudy Johnson and didn't even know it was him, man.
Really?
Yeah, here at Aventura Mall, man. Because Aventura Mall, you see a lot of celebrities. It's like one of the best malls here in Miami, and I see him and he's really buff, man. And I see the bald head and I go, man, that looks like Rudy. So my sister says, you should say something, you know, just say something. So I go, hey, Rudy, and he looked up. And I said, holy crap, man, I didn't know it was you. I said, you want to know the irony of the Bengals here in Miami? And he's like, holy crap. I didn't think that was even, that even occurred here. There's not many of us.
That's awesome.
He was cool as hell. He was really cool. He was kind of in a rush. I didn't bother him because he was buying something with I think he was there with his girlfriend, wife, I don't know who she was, and they were with a kid. So I basically told him, man, I'm a big Bengals fan, man, and you know, he was like, oh, it's always good to be recognized. Appreciate the support, man. And he was cool. It was right in the times when he was maybe in his prime.
How long ago was that?
I want to say it was like 06 or 07.
All right, and this was at a club or what?
No, this was at a mall. I haven't through a mall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was shopping and stuff, but it was crazy. It was crazy. I met him, and I believe he's the only. But I see a few Bengals fans down here. When they see me, they're like, "Oh, are you from Ohio?" I'm like, "No," and they're like, "Well, why are you a Bengals fan?" I'm like, "Man, I just love the guys, man." They see me here and they freak out because a lot of them are from Ohio, and they're like, "Yeah, I used to live in Cincinnati, and I moved down here." And when they hear that I'm not from there and I'm a fan there, they look shocked. They ask me why I endure what I endure.
Well, I got a little fun fact if you guys didn't know already. Did you know that Russell Wilson was born in Cincinnati? I just found that out.
No.
Not that it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Where did he grow up, though?
I think Illinois, right? I was trying to look it up and see if it was actually true or not, but hold on.
I love that guy, dude. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. What is your opinion of him, Amas? Do you think he's a top 10 quarterback?
I think he's actually a top 5. I mean, if you just look at efficiency and what he actually does with the ball, I mean, it's hard to argue his numbers. I mean, he's been really good for a while, and this is only his 3rd year, I think. It's just kind of crazy. So, but
I think
that's just my opinion.
I think it's a double-edged sword because, I mean, he's on an awesome team, and all he has to do is maintain the ship, and he's great at it, you know. But I think if I would like to see him in a wide-open offense where he had to carry the team, and sometimes that's unfair because not every guy's built for that. Some guys are just solidly built to endure the situation, step up when you need them, and maybe not necessarily carry the team. But I think a lot of his stuff is predicated on moving outside of the pocket, and he struggles in the pocket. Yeah, there's shortcomings, but I definitely take his strengths with. I mean, more than I lament him for his weaknesses. But you know, sometimes I think I wouldn't throw him up there with the elite in terms of stats, but in terms of intangibles, yeah, he's definitely up there. I take him any day, but you know, sometimes he struggles in the pocket. He had that 4-interception game last week. Guess what? He made the touchdown when he needed him. It's tough with him. It's tough to gauge. So if you want to win, and you have a well-built team like they do, I mean, we got to give credit to Pete Carroll and these guys building the system around him and not asking him to do too much like we do with Dalton at times, and he stepping up to the challenge and not making the stupid mistakes aside from last week. And yeah, I'm just torn about him. I don't know where to put my finger on with him.
Yeah, it's. You know, they don't ask him to do too much, but then if they fall behind or if it's a close game, they say, "Hey, we gotta put this one on you," and he makes a play. And I think a lot of it is Lynch. But he's working with not much talent on the outside, at least not big name talent. So I really like it. And by the way, that game was absolutely berserk. That championship game was one of the gnarliest things I've ever seen. I couldn't even believe it.
The 2-point conversion was just like you knew they were going to win it after that. I mean,
right.
He drops back to 25 yards and just chucks it up. I mean,
especially after the onside kick deal, I was like, oh my gosh.
But sometimes it's just you just got to be flat out lucky. Like the other team just does something that makes. I pulled my hair out when that guy made that interception, Burnett or whoever. and it was 5 minutes to go, and he slid to the ground like it was 50 seconds left. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? You had the whole field. You got to go drive. This is a great defense you're going against. And he just inexplicably slid to the ground and tried not to advance the ball. And they didn't move the ball that drive, I believe, and the Seahawks got the ball back. He possibly had the touchdown to score if he had ran that ball back. But he just slid to the ground. And it's plays like that made you go, yeah, Seattle's going to win this. Especially with that defense, man. You can throw 4 interceptions, and you're still in the game. That was incredible. Especially against the Packers.
Did you guys see that that little like selfie video the guy in the stands took? He had like a GoPro on a prod or a stick or something, and he was kind of like filming himself and other people around him, and it was like it was basically from like mid fourth quarter on, and it showed like the reaction of the entire stadium when like every big Seattle play happened. It was pretty rad. It was pretty rad.
Where'd you see that, on YouTube or something?
It was on Twitter. It was like a Sports Illustrated tweet that they put out. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube though, for sure. He's like a Hawaiian guy or something, and it was pretty rad. The place went ballistic. It was crazy.
I'm sure they did. I'll look for it, man. I'll look for it.
All right, fellas, I got to bounce out. It's good talking.
You read my man. Talking to you guys, boys.
All right, see you guys.
All right, good night. Have a good night.
You too, buddy.
Good night.